All right, welcome to the Dead 3 Coaching Show. I'm your host, George Evans. I'm super excited about today's episode. As many of you know that have listened to our podcast and our YouTube channel, maybe 2 months ago, I got involved with Ben Newman and one of his Coach to Coaches programs, and I've had a number of guests on with that. And right when that thing started, there's probably 35 or so people that were a part of this group, his second kind of edition of that Coach to Coaches program. But there was one gentleman that was on that, that I started consuming his content, started reaching out to him, started listening to him. And I was like, man, I would love to have this gentleman, this coach on our program. And it's one of those things that I do believe, and I'm trying to do a better job of it, of kind of manifesting or thinking about or kind of getting locked in on what I would like to have happen in my life. And so that person, I reached out to this large group. Hey, who would like to be on the podcast? And Coach Ted Rath said, hey, I would like to be on the podcast. And I immediately messaged him back and said, yes, you are the one I was really hoping would want to be on the podcast, without any disservice to the other people that were on the call. But Coach Rath, thank you so much for coming and making time for this. I know you and Ben are really tight, and I know that the content that you're putting out there is really impacted me, and you don't even know me that well, but I've gone through some things here recently, and your message has really impacted me and has continued to push me along, and you don't even know me. And there's always a message that we could go in deep there about content and purpose and why and all that sort of stuff. But thank you for being available and for taking the time to visit with us today. I really appreciate it.
George, thank you. I'm honored and humbled to be here. And I just love kind of talking to people with like minds. And I love seeing people out there that are doing things to create better outcomes for other people. And you're doing exactly that with this platform and with everything you're doing. So I'm excited, but thank you for those kind of words, man. And I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, so perfect. So I did not say what you do. So fill everybody in on your profession, what you do. And I think you probably do some things on the side as well that are probably not a part of your typical job. But right now, where do you receive your paycheck from?
Yeah, so the last 16 years has been the NFL, so the National Football League, and it's led me through. I've worked for 4 teams, worked for the Detroit Lions, Miami Dolphins, LA Rams, and Philadelphia Eagles. Have risen to the vice president level, VP of player performance, which if I go into the laundry list of things that I do, I'm a guidance counselor some days, I'm a strength coach some days. I basically it's strength and conditioning, sports science, nutrition, cafeteria, some of the inflows, massage therapy, recovery modalities, even some of the travel strategies of how do you take a team international when you have to play a London game or a game in Brazil like the Eagles will this year. So all those things and those strategies, everything that really goes on behind a player's performance, that's what that entails. But the last 16 years, almost 2 decades, I've been in the NFL doing that, and I did it for 2 years at the collegiate level before that. So it's been a fun ride.
So we could go a number of different routes here. So I'm curious on 16 years ago, day one, responsibility one, and how that has positioned. I'm curious how you started and the roles and responsibilities you had on day one 16 years ago, because I'm willing to bet everything that you just rattled off, you were not doing day one. That is, so what were you hired for years ago? And I'm guessing based on earlier conversations, you may have started with the Lions in Detroit. So when you started 16 years ago, what were your responsibilities then?
Yeah, that's a great question, George. It's changed so much. I think just the field of performance, health, fitness, nutrition, you think about what 1 year brings as far as scientific changes and some of the research that comes out. Think about that times a million, because almost 2 decades in that. When I first got hired, it was basically like, hey, you're going to be in the weight room, just help guys get stronger, don't get anybody hurt. Okay, cool, we can do that. And there was more complicated intricacies obviously than that. But if I had to summarize it, it was you were a weight room coach, you were a strength and conditioning coach. That's really all you did, lifting and running with the players. Now you look at where we've come from just data. Every player that I have on a roster, I have literally millions of rows of data on each player. So you look at what we're collecting from force plates to on-field GPS or RFID systems. We're tracking every step that every player takes. Then we're looking at sleep. Then we're looking at biomarkers based on, all right, what's your cortisol levels at this week versus last week. You look at some of those things that we can see from a data perspective, George, it's absolutely incredible. The profession has kind of shifted towards you're really a data scientist, but you're still balancing the psychological, mind, body, and soul. I always say that we're training the entire athlete, and that's the unique thing.
So, like, the technology probably is the forefront of that. The better technology we're getting, and when we started 20 years ago, so you're 2002, 2003. That's what so when I heard you were the VP of strength and conditioning, that's where my mind went. Okay, here's a guy with weight programs and strength and conditioning and squats and runs and 40-yard times and agility and things of that nature. But it is now so much more than that. So where does your what is your focus? You gave this laundry list of everything that you have your hand in. Is there something that is that niche that you are just super passionate about? Like, is it getting everybody's mind correct and to get ready to go to Brazil and how to travel and how to make sure their bodies are, prepared for that type of trip? Like what is it strength? Is it mindset? Is it nutrition? Is it sleep habits? Like what is kind of geeking you out right now as you kind of put your priorities in line?
Yeah, I love that. I think sometimes a lot of people, George, they get trapped because there's so much data available to where you're only stuck in the objective. I do love mindset. And I think if I had to pick one thing that I'm passionate about, I would say it's training the mind, because athletes, CEOs, business people, whatever we're talking about in any industry, the people who I've seen who have sustained long-term excellence are the people that maintain that mindset. And the people that when they do fail, they see it as an opportunity, not as an obstacle. They look at it as, okay, cool, I failed. I'm going to learn from that. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm not going to let these bad days morph into another bad day, and so on and so forth. They learn from those failures. They learn from those short-term mistakes, and then they continue to build on that. Because I've seen, George, in my career, and you probably have too, so many players, and going back training, whatever sport, male, female, doesn't matter. I've seen so many athletes with the physiological tools, but they didn't have the mindset right to where they could achieve what they could ultimately build into, because they fell short of whatever their opportunity was. But I've seen also the other side of those athletes where physically undersized. Jason Kelsey's an example. You're a little bit smaller than the average. Aaron Donald is undersized by NFL standards for his position, and he's one of the best ever to do what he did. You look at those players, I've seen them achieve great things, Hall of Fame type careers, because of their mindset and because of the work that they put in. So for me, it's always that, George. It's mindset, and then what are you willing to do? I always say daily habits. So your daily deposits, what are you willing to add and what are you willing to subtract from your daily habits that will lead you to that long-term goal, whatever you have in mind, because your habits will become your goals. That's going to become your legacy. And I've seen way more athletes on that side. So I love mindset, because I feel like it's the ultimate separator.
Oh man, I got goosebumps, right? The people I follow that are similar, the Ben Newmans of the world and you and some other people that I follow, the question that always bubbles up to me is, what are you struggling with? What are the mindsets that you're trying to create for yourself? Like Ben and you are just crushing it, right? And we see all this stuff on Instagram and your mindsets. And I've always wondered what these elite performers struggle with, right? And you say your habits, create the mindset and all that. Like, what are you working on right now? What are you struggling with right now? What are you doing right now that is stopping you from getting to your next level? Because I could rattle all of mine off, right? And I feel like I'm so much in that middle 80, I call it the middle 80 of comfortable, right? And I look at you as being, and Ben being in that top 10, like that top 10% that's just crushing it. And I'm trying to figure out how to get there. But what do you think the elite people, not even you, not even Ben, the Aaron Donalds of the world and the Travis Kelce's of the world, like, I wonder, those elite people, the Tom Brady's, they still have to have their struggles. They still have to wake up and say, man, I messed up on this yesterday. What do you think those people, including yourself, might struggle with? And what barriers are they still trying to break down?
Yeah, George, the first thing I'll say, imposter syndrome. Like, I think everyone deals with it, whether you're willing to admit that or not, because there's days you wake up and like, am I living my message? Am I living these values? Am I living these morals? So I think number one, we all struggle with that. I know I will absolutely admit that I struggle with that often. So I think that's one thing that is common to human beings. That's something that we all dive into and we all fight. The other thing that I struggle with, especially this time, it's summertime. So we don't get a lot of downtime in the schedule. So when you try to build healthy habits, you try to build effort, and that comes with a lot of work. And that comes with a lot of things. I have 3 children. I've missed so many birthdays and I've missed so many things with my kids, George. That's what I struggle with, is where I'm investing this effort into, whether it's a sport or whether it's some of my side ventures or whatever it is. I'm investing in this, but that takes time. And for me, time is the ultimate thing that we will never get enough of. It doesn't matter what your wealth is. It doesn't matter what your net worth is. It doesn't matter what you've created as far as a legacy. Your time is very limited. So for me, I can't buy more time. I can't do that. So I struggle with, am I doing the right things right now, where 10 years from now, I'm trying to zoom out and say, in 10 years, am I going to look back and say, I invested in my children, but I also invested in a career and I helped other people and I did all these things that are important to me, but did I do the right thing? Because at the end of the day, George, I look at it, I'm a Christian. I look at it from a religion. Am I doing the right things that God put me on this earth to do? Am I impacting people because I feel like I have a skill for that? Am I impacting my children? Am I leading them? Am I leading my wife? Am I doing the right things in the most important roles that I have, which are being a father and a husband first and foremost, and then everything else builds off of that. So I have to look at myself internally. And I think when I go to summer mode, that's this time, I try to sleep in. I try to spend time with my kids, like do the fun family board game nights and all that stuff. Am I being there though? Am I on my phone constantly? Am I text messaging? Am I responding? I have to be invested and I have to live my message. That's probably the biggest thing that I struggle with, George, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing the things today that myself 10 years from now will look back and say, hey, you did a good job. You were there for your kids and you were there for your wife and you built this great life. Great job. You didn't sacrifice your morals or anything like that.
I used to say this with some of the athletes I work with. I coached small college basketball, and now I work with the youth in the area here in St. Louis. And I have always used this phrase of capable. And when I go and speak with some corporations or I go work with teams professionally, usually, not always, at some point, I will ask the question, are you capable of more and better? And because I've always liked that question, because even the elite athletes or even the elite organization and leaders have to say, yes, they're capable of more and better. I would believe, like the Steve Jobs or Bezos or whoever, like, yeah, we could do more. We could be better. Like there's, I would hope that people would be humble enough to say that. And then that always opened the door of a conversation of, okay, let's really figure out, where these problem statements are or where we can get better and try to reverse engineer some of that stuff. For some, like I've always led with that. And I like that. Like I'm capable of more and better every single day. It's 10:30 in the morning here on a Tuesday and I'm already 5 hours in, and man, I could have had a much better morning. I could have ran and worked out and drank water and had my fruit. And I could have, spent more time with my wife. Like, man, there's 6 things right there that could have made this morning better. But Mike Tomlin had this thing that came out that has really shifted my thoughts on that. And I'm curious on your thoughts. It's not what you're capable of, is what he says. It is what you are willing to do that matters to greatness and your next level of greatness. And that just, when I heard him say that and his tone, his message, his intensity always resonates with me. Like I really like that guy and his message. And that has really impacted me because I'm capable of all of this. The athletes I work with at the high school level are capable of playing college basketball somewhere. Maybe all of them are, but it's what you're willing to do. And I'm curious, I guess, your thoughts on that, because you kind of hit on that and alluded to it a little bit of what you're willing to do. We're capable of all this. The people in the NFL are capable of probably being Hall of Famers or making Super Bowls, but what are they willing to do? Like I'd be willing to bet you agree with kind of that message and that language a little bit.
Oh, 100%. First and foremost, Mike T is unbelievable as a leader, as a football
Mhm.
coach, as a football mind. We actually share the same agent, Brian Levy, who's been my longtime agent. And Mike T is incredible. So, number one of my favorite things to say, George, is do your habits of today align with your goals of tomorrow? Similar to what I was just talking about. If
Mm.
you're in high school right now, but your ultimate goal is to become a college basketball player, what the hell are you doing today with your nutrition, with your sleep, with your training
Mm.
habits that will make you a college basketball player in 3, 4, 5 years? Kobe Bryant did 3 workouts a day after he was already a Hall of Fame caliber player. He woke up at 3:30 in the morning and he talked about editing your life, editing out the bad things and building in the
Mm.
good things that you knew would be in alignment with the future self that you wanted to create. So how do you do that? You do it with choices. And that's the beauty, George.
Mm.
It's our choice. So do you have the capability? Yeah, everyone does. We all do. Do you have the capability to be a better version of yourself? Yes, you do. I do. We all do.
Mm.
You have the choice now. Are you gonna build in those habits that will become a better version of yourself, or are you just gonna sit back and say, "Nah, I'm capable, but I'm not gonna do it"? That's your choice. Positive,
Mm.
negative, those are your choices. So those daily habits, you have to make a choice, but then you have to act on it. And I think we're all about action. The people that I've seen become hugely successful are the people that take action. And it's that
Mm.
urgent mentality of, I'm not going to sit back and wait. I know I have the capability, but then literally that split second, you know it, you act upon it. So, what are your actions saying about your future legacy? Because you're building it right now, whether you want to believe it or not, even over the last couple months, couple weeks, couple days, what actions have you put into place that are going to lead to a better or worse outcome? You have to look at yourself critically in the mirror and answer those questions.
Mm. I had a I took my son to Indianapolis this past weekend for a basketball tournament. It was great. I love being on the road. I love living out of hotels with my family on weekends for basketball, the camaraderie, all that. Had a great time. I ended up meeting this lady who is a Nashville singer. And she said something, and I knew her dad. My boy's coach knows her dad, and we all went out together, and she performed in downtown Indianapolis. And it was great. She's really talented, and I am a country music fan, and I love country music. I love the guitar, and she was really talented. And I started talking with her dad about the business of Nashville and her mindset and how she's tackling this. And she's like 23, 24 years old, and she's on the road and all this. And he said something to me that really impacted me. And I don't have this mindset. And I'm curious on the mindset of your takeaway of this, and maybe how the mindset of people in the NFL, elite level athletes. But what he told me, she said, was in Nashville, they've got to separate the people that want to be famous for being famous on Instagram or whatever it is, people that want to make movies, people that just want to be pretty or talented or well known, or all that, and the people that want to sing and the people that have they want to separate those people out. So they were interviewing her, and her comment was this. She said, "I am here so Taylor Swift opens up for me one day." And I was like, man, that's like that's a mic drop for a 23-year-old lady that wants to go all in, and her ambition and goal and her drive and ambition is Taylor Swift's going to open for me one day. I was like, I looked at her dad and I said, that might be the single greatest thing I've heard, right? In terms of, putting this out there and just being focused on something and being driven towards, because you and I might look at that and say, that's impossible. That's impossible, right? Where somebody like Patrick Mahomes is sitting around saying, no, I can catch Brady. Like, I can do this. Like, I can be the best, right? That mindset, that, like, I love that. And she's actually, I think, going to come on the podcast here shortly. And that's my first question to her. But that mindset of the impossible, like, that seems impossible. Like, catching Brady seems impossible, right? That mindset, do you see, like, is that reserved for the select few in the NFL, or what you've seen in business, or what you've seen on mindset coaches and the elite executives? Or is that the separator these people have that think that extreme?
I think first and foremost, that's unique because I think some people are born with that. I go back once again, Aaron Donald, Calvin
Mm-hmm.
Johnson, like Ndamukong
Yeah.
Suh, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, the best of the best at what they do in their particular positions, maybe of all time. I've seen those guys and they have that. Now, what I would say, George, I believe it's trainable, because for me, the first question that I ask if we're going into a draft or we're scouting a player or it's a free agent, I ask them, do you love the game? Do you love football? Because it's back to your original question. I either want to be famous or I want to play this game because I love what this game does for me, because I love competition and I want to kick the crap out of another guy that's lined up against me that thinks he can beat me. So for me, do you love the game? All right, now explain to me a time when you've went through some adversity and tell me how you overcame it and what did it do for you? Did it build you into a better version of yourself? Because I want to hear about that struggle. Because if you love the game, or if you love singing, or if you love the sport, you love sales, you love business, whatever it is, you're going to struggle through some adverse moments and you're going to go through stress. Did you lean into the stress and did you build off of it? Or did you shy away? Did you run away and say, all right, I'll just let that pass. I'll go around it. Screw that. You need to go up to that obstacle, that rock, that boulder, whatever it is. You got to run through that freaking thing, George, because at that point, you have a choice. Once again, it's your choice. And the people I've seen that have that mentality, like it sounds like she does, those are the people that lean into that stress. They don't shy away from it. They go into that and they go harder when they see that adversity.
Man, I love it. I love it, man. I need to hire you as my personal coach here. I love this, man. But I've had some personal things happen that I haven't shared publicly or anything like that. It's not that earth shattering, and I'm not. It's part of my journey. My company laid off and shut down 2 of their businesses. I'm sorry, my company that I work for shut down 2 of their global offices, and one of the 2 they shut down was my office that I worked at. So I got laid off a few weeks ago, and I reached out and kind of set that I had some things. I have some goals and ambitions and things I'd like to accomplish, and this is maybe that kick to get me all in on some of that stuff and feel like I can do it and I deserve it and I'm working towards it and taking action, like you mentioned. And I put that in our WhatsApp group, and you mentioned that to me. You got to lean into that stress. That was your message to me. And I think it was a private message to me that, again, really impacted me, made me smile, gave me goosebumps, created some action for me that day, made me feel good about the things that are happening to me, but leaning into that stress. And I love that phrase and have used it to a few of my friends that are going through some issues as well. So anyway, I just say that as a appreciation and acknowledgement for that, because, the Navy, Rich Diviney, who I really like, I don't know if you know him. He wrote a book called the Attributes. It's and I'm really fascinated by military history, and he has these, you got to lean into that stress, right? And you've got to. His thing with the Navy SEALs was you have 2 seconds, 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes to think, like, to feel sorry for yourself. You got 2 minutes, and then it's time to move on, because in his world, people die. Right. And we don't have time for this. Right. And so it's your comment to me of leaning into the stress was like, all right, like, you got to lean into this and you don't have much time to be on the ground. Like, you got to get going. Anyway, that's kind of a long acknowledgement, but your phrase triggered that for me. Can you tell within 5 minutes of an athlete being drafted in an interview if they've got it? Can you tell that quick if that Jalen Hurts has it, right? Or Aaron Donald has it? Or can you tell that with your experience, you're 16 years in the league and playing college football and all that sort of stuff, that you can tell, like, that guy's different?
Yeah, I like that question because yes and no. First, I mean, there's a reason that so many draft picks don't work out, George, is because it's not that obvious. But there's a common component within those people that achieve unbelievable things. So take Jalen Hurts. What sold me when we were going through the draft process, we had Carson Wentz. At the time, I think he was either still the highest paid quarterback or one of in the entire NFL. So we drafted Jalen in the second round, and it was the city of Philadelphia isn't shy. They were like, what the heck is going on? What are you guys doing? But prior to that year, I was actually still with the Rams, but Alabama asked me to come out and I did some consulting with them. I looked at all their performance metrics and I did a couple things with their sports performance and their sports medicine staff. And I looked at a bunch of things. When Jalen had transferred, he was at Oklahoma. I said, tell me about Hurts. And they said, here's the best story that I could tell you. And I was talking to Scott Cochran and Tyler Owens, who's at Washington now. And those guys were like, here's what happened. The day after he got benched, So Tua takes over. It's national media. It's news. In this kid's life at the point he's 19, drugged through the mud in the national media. Jalen gets benched. The next morning, they have a workout. They're in the weight room. So they're doing uncomfortable things, which some players love, some players dislike to a nth degree. He's going through this workout, and there's a freshman who's kind of acting up over to the side. Jalen, not Tua, not anyone else, not the coaches. Jalen cuts off Alabama. We have a certain standard that we live to. That's not how we act. That's not how we approach our work. He put his arm around this kid, showed the ultimate lesson of leadership, and said, I don't care what I'm going through right now. It's still about the team. The team is the team, and the star of the team is the team. So he puts his arm around this kid, takes him through the entire workout, and shows him that there's a standard, because the first guy putting the work in is Jalen. The last guy that's going to leave the building is Jalen. He's there to put the work in. And right when I heard that story, that took me 2 seconds to realize I'll bet my life on this kid that he's going to work his ass off to make sure he achieves whatever he needs to achieve, because he has that mentality. It's not about him. It's about the team. And it's about whatever the work needs to be done. He's going to do it. And that's the separator. It's that action. That was action that you could see from an example of that story. But George, those guys, give me.
So this in the entitlement, is there entitlement in the NFL? I have to believe there is. These people have been told how great they are since they're 13, right? And they got these 7-on-7 leagues in the world of basketball. You got this AAU, and these people are told how great they are, and then they get drafted, and they still think they're just going to go in and roll and be the Aaron Donalds of the world. And everybody's an Aaron Donald of the world in that. Everybody can play, right? Everybody can play in those leagues. You don't get drafted, right? But those are the separators, right? These standards. And so I guess I'm curious on not just mindset, right? But under the umbrella of mindset, what do you see are those separators of the elite 10% in the NFL that are doing the habits that they've created to be great, that the other 80%, 90% don't have? They're capable of it. They're not willing to do it. Their level of greatness isn't there. And the top 10% are doing what? What are they doing that the other 90% aren't doing?
I'm going to give you a word that I love and I think is undervalued, not just in sports, but in business and in life: coachability. Are you coachable? For me, when you look at it, the best athletes I've ever been around and the most successful business entrepreneurs, whatever we're talking about, they're coachable. Why? Because they have humility. They look at it as someone's trying to coach me. I'm not going to take personal offense to this, because ego is the enemy. It's a great book by Ryan Holiday, but it's true. It's a statement in life. If you have ego at the forefront of any type of feedback, you're going to build this wall. When you remove that ego, when you humbly accept whatever that coaching is, you're going to look at yourself a little bit more critically and say, maybe that person's right. Maybe I do need to wake up earlier. Maybe I do need to start this nutritional habit. Maybe I do need to sleep better. Maybe I do need to train harder. Whatever it is, you're going to look at it with a humble attitude, and you're going to accept that as what it is. It's feedback. For me, feedback is an amazing separator, because it's an opportunity to get better. Is all feedback equal? No. And some feedback is not great. I'm not going to ignore that fact. There's some people that will give you feedback because maybe they want to see you slip. Maybe they want to see you stumble. But if you approach every situation with the assumption that someone's trying to make you better, especially someone who's coaching you, and in sports, business, whatever, our ability is going to be tied into whatever we're trying to accomplish. In sports, we're trying to win championships. So I'm going to coach you hard because I want our team to win a championship. If you receive that coaching with a humble attitude, you're probably going to apply whatever those habits I'm asking you to into your life. And that's going to make you a better athlete. It's going to make us a better team. It's going to help everyone at the end of the day. So humility and coachability, George, are the great separators when you honestly look at it. And I've seen that in my own life. I'm sure you probably have, and everyone else listening, because when you humbly accept some of that coaching, it's not easy, but when you apply it, it typically results in a lot better outcomes for you.
Yeah, it's a shame. And I had this message last night with some athletes I was working with. we can't have the same message for 7 years, right? We can't be saying the same thing to you for 7 years. Like I always love the athlete or the professional where they receive the feedback and they implement it in the next rep, the next drill, the next conversation, right? Where they're like, they've moved on. Like, hey, Tom Brady, Aaron Donald, these people that you've mentioned, Jalen Hurts, super coachable. You think Tom Brady after 19 years, 7 Super Bowls, this guy can read every defense, this guy can make every throw, this guy can lead every huddle, every team meeting room. Is that guy still being coached? Is he being coached hard? Is he still receptive to that? Is there anything else for that dude to learn?
There's always more to learn. And I think that's a unique thing because I didn't work with Tom personally, but knowing stories from people that were in that building, Tom got coached harder by Bill Belichick than any other player in that locker room because number one, he knew that there was a standard. And number two, Bill Belichick understood I'm going to coach our best player and our most elite player at the same level that I'm going to coach our practice squad player that might get cut this next week because there is a standard. There's a standard to everything. And the standard becomes the standard based on your actions. It's not based on what you say because you could say, we're going to coach everybody hard. But if you give Tom special benefits and you let him get away with this, that, and the other, then your standard is what your actions tell me. It's don't tell me, show me. We all see better than we hear. So I'm going to watch what your actions tell me rather than listen to what you say. So I think those guys get coached and they ask for that coaching even more, George. The great example that I would give, and it's football, but it's not. Nate Burleson. Nate is killing it. Like he's on the same Michael Strahan trajectory to where he's making more money in TV than he ever did in the NFL, and he played in the NFL for a decade. Nate was a great football player, but Nate took coaching in everything that he did, and then he knew that he wanted a career in TV and entertainment after. I remember he was with the Detroit Lions when I was there, and me and Nate would always talk, be like, Nate, what are you going to do? He was like, I'm doing this broadcast boot camp this summer and this weekend. I'm doing this because I want to build in this career path to where when I'm done playing the game, I want to do this. You look at he's all over TV now. He's doing stuff with every major network. He's making a killing, but he's doing it. He's impacting people because he took coachability at the time. He knew he had to build in. He was still becoming a great football player. He was at the same time building a secondary career because he was making the right choices and he was taking coaching in all aspects, whether it was football, whether it was TV, entertainment, interviewing, all those things. He built a career path for himself and he's reaping the rewards now because he made those choices, but he took that coaching.
Why is that so hard for people, especially in the NFL? Is it entitlement? Is it I know more than you? Leave me alone, let me play. I've got my paycheck. I'm in the league. I really don't like your point of you better love football. Like to be in that league, you better love it, right? Or you're going to find yourself out of it. But if that is a pillar of sustainability in that league and that type of paycheck and that type of fulfillment of playing as Warren Sapp would say, playing a child sport for a king's ransom, right? Why is that so hard for people to cling to make that change? Like if I had that in front of me and you were giving a workshop and you said that is the thing, and I were self-aware enough to sit there and say, shit, I suck at that. Like I got to make some changes if I want to survive this, and I've got to become that. I would do that. Like I would do it. I would be the most coachable person around. But why? But people don't. So I'm wondering why that is so hard for people to. Maybe it's the ego you mentioned. I don't know.
Yeah, I want to say it's ego and discomfort, George. People tend to they shy away from uncomfortable things. And David Goggins talks about this a lot. When we get better at doing uncomfortable things, we will become better versions of ourselves. So ego is number one because you don't want to admit that you might not be the best person ever and you're not perfect and all these other things. That's freaking ridiculous. Admit that you are not as good as you think you are, and that's the first step to improvement. And then number two, get comfortable being uncomfortable. It just like what you just said. If I'm going to coach you and say, hey, if you invest this, it's going to be uncomfortable for the first month, 2 months, whatever. But a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you're going to look back and say that investment was well worth it. Are you willing to do that? The short-term discomfort, is it worth the long-term payout? Well, it should be because most things that are uncomfortable are going to lead to better results. It's ego and it's discomfort. People shy away from both of those because their ego is going to deflect everything that they should hear. And then their discomfort, their lack of tolerance for discomfort, George, is what's going to really limit people overall. I think we got to get comfortable doing uncomfortable things way more often.
See, I think, and I don't think I do myself a disservice. I want to be great. I think I have greatness in me. I think I have this vision of what the next 20 years, 30 years of my life could be. You know, it's what I'm capable of, but what I'm willing to do. But I think that 80% I'm in, that bubble of 80 that I tell these athletes I work with, that I do think I do think I'm humble. I don't think I have a big ego. I do think I have imposter syndrome, all that sort of stuff. But I think that 80% is just comfort. It's just comfort, right? It's really not that bad, George. You're making a good living doing X, Y, and Z and, blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying, no, I can do more, be more, have more, contribute more, impact more. And this is not okay, right? And having that daily mindset to do it. But for me personally, I think it is very much a sense of comfort and being able to push myself to get out of that. You brought up consulting for Alabama. Now, most people that listen to this podcast would know about Alabama football, would know about Nick Saban, and definitely the success they've had. They hired the University of Washington coach. His name is slipping me right now. I grew up in Seattle, so they hired they hired a coach that finally got my program to where I believe it deserves to be. I believe the Huskies are a top 10, if not a top 5 team, or at least they should be. And they stole our coach, and now he's at Alabama. But why is Alabama different? Why is Nick Saban different? I know we can talk about mindset and standards and holding people accountable and all that, but I think like the Oklahomas, the USCs, the Michigans, the Ohio States of the world, they all have that. But man, was that guy able to sustain some things that nobody else has. And I think we witnessed over the past 15 plus years, 20 years or whatever, that the highest level of coaching and greatness sustained over a long period of time that I have seen. I guess Belichick and Saban and Phil Jackson and some of those folks. But what was different about him, that program, and the way that was built?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts there. Number one, I think Washington's in good hands with Jed Fish. He's a good friend, and I think he'll do a good job there, George. But Nick Saban, the first word that comes to mind, number one, he was the defensive coordinator for Bill Belichick when they were back in the Cleveland Browns. So when you look at it, those guys, they're very close friends. They're very similar in how they approach everything. The first thing I'll say, because you brought Ben Newman. Ben Newman always talks about this. He still has 2 personal coaches that he goes to every week, every whatever it is. Nick Saban had 3 coaches, personal coaches, executive coaches that would help him through his mentality and his mindset each and every day. So he had a regular rhythm. But the first thing I'll say is consistency. I truly believe that consistency is the truest measurement of performance, because if you can consistently apply the right habits, they will build long-term growth and long-term resilience. For me, as I looked at Nick Saban, the first question I asked when I got in the building, I was like, tell me about Saban's daily routine. And they said, all right, well, what do you want to know? What time does he get to the building? They're like, it's freakishly crazy, but he arrives within this 2-minute window, literally exactly every day. It was a crazy time, George. It was like between 6:23 a.m. and 6:25. They're like, we've been here for 15 years. He has never arrived outside that window. It's between this 2-minute window, based on traffic, it's never been outside this. And then, all right, well, what's he eat for breakfast? He eats the same thing every single day. And then they go through this daily routine, and I'm listening. I'm like, this guy, it's almost to the point where it's obsessive, which it is. I think success has a habit of obsessiveness at some level with the good things in life. And Nick Saban had built his daily routine around this obsessive pattern that he knew contributed to him being the best version of himself for that day, because he had to talk to his certain coaches. He had to go through this breakfast routine. He had to spend time with his wife in the morning before he left. He had to arrive at the office at a certain time. Then he made his recruiting calls. Then he met with the staff. Then he built this routine in alignment with what he knew would bring out the best in him. So the people like that, the Bill Belichicks of the world, the Nick Sabans, the greatest of the great. You look at the players too, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, you look at the Aaron Donalds. They had this obsessive routine that was built on daily habits that they knew would bring out the best version of themselves. And I think we all have that opportunity, George. We all have the greatness within us. We all have it. we have the choice to make whether we're willing to do that or not, because the short-term
Mm.
resilience will lead to long-term perseverance. You have to make the choices, though, and you have to build in those habits.
So people get fascinated by morning routines and so the routines and habits and rituals that folks have, and I am definitely one of those people, right? I do ask that question a lot in just conversations with people that I might have, right? Like, what do you do every morning? Like, because if I can get a checklist of, hey, I'm going to leave the office at this time, that way I'm there between 6:23, 6:25, and I'm going to then visit with like then I could be able, then maybe I could replicate that, maybe I could, you know, unpack that and do something very similar to that. So so we are fascinated. I am fascinated by that because it seems like something that I could do. And I want to, and if you could do that, and if you could have this level of success and accomplishment, then maybe I could have those same benefits. And so I am interested. I do ask people that question, not to put you on the spot, but are there absolutes that you just have to have every morning when you wake up? Because like I rattled off 20 minutes ago how my morning's been good. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got 3 great children. I've had some things happen to me personally, but I'm super excited about what's next. I had this great opportunity to visit with you. I've got these other calls that, like, I'm super excited about my day, but I'm still left with shit. My morning could have been a lot better. Like I didn't follow this plan, and I missed out on like 6 things that would have positioned me towards having a different day. So that being said, like, what do you do every day? Like, how do you leverage your mornings to make sure and ensure that you have an outstanding day, and how you unpack that or load it up in the morning for you to have a great day? Are there rituals, habits, routines you do every day?
Yeah, amazing question, George, because I think this is the foundation of long-term success. It's
Yeah.
how you start your day. Number one, the first thing that I'll talk about is what I call the toe test. So it's when your alarm goes off, the first victory of the day is never hitting
Mm.
snooze. You do not have an option. So right now, switch your mindset. Screw that. You will never hit snooze again. Make up that determination. Make your mind up right now. And then how fast do your toes hit the floor? So immediately, my goal, get out of bed before that second buzz goes off. You hear that first ding, whatever your alarm is, you're
Love
done,
it.
you hit it, your toes are on the floor. So you take that immediate action. That's your first victory of the day. Within 3 seconds of waking up, you already have your first win. So for me, I start with that. There's an urgency there. And then I've tried to really reverse engineer this because of the people that I've seen doing incredible things and the successful people I've really been fortunate to meet throughout my life. I've tried to simplify this. For me, I've came up with what I call the 3 W's. So I have to worship, I have to work out, and I have to write. For me, number one, when I do hit my toes to the floor, the next thing I do is hit my knees. I thank God, I say a prayer, I go through whatever my daily list is and just thank him for everything. I try to build gratitude into that first couple seconds of my day because we are very fortunate to be talking to you, to have the technology, to be sitting here on a computer in a beautiful office in a home. We're all fortunate, George. So you can find gratitude in your day. So I start with worship. My next, I have to work out. The daily physiological needs that we need. If you want to be at your best so that you can go help others, you have to take care of yourself. So for me, that's physically working out. It's doing the things that I know I need. And then I get endorphin releases. I get all these other things from a physiological benefit, but I'm also putting myself in the best version so that I can go help others, which will also further the reward that I get out of that. And then I need to write. This is a habit that I've developed recently. Right. I literally just finished my first book. We're in the final editing process, so it's going to come out later in this fall. So I'm going through those things. What I've found with writing, George, it's helped me define clarity. So as I find this clarity, I jot down my ideas, my thoughts, whatever I go through is how I came up with the 3 W's. And I think through all these things. They're things that I've done and I've really applied into my life. But now I've been able to write down and really clarify my thoughts and ideas to where I have a deeper understanding. And then when I do read, when I do listen to podcasts, when I absorb other information, it helps build upon that clarity. And then the next day, when I write those things down, it helps me remember them. But it also helps me really put things and contain them into a certain space to where I can say, all right, I need to revisit that. That's something I'm going to need to remember. Let me go back and revisit that. It's there. I can pull it up on my phone, on my computer, or wherever I need it. And then I can build those things into better habits for myself.
What time do you get going in the morning? Like when your toes touch the floor, what time is it?
Depending on the time of year, if it's in season, I'm getting up at around 4:30. So every time of year is different. Off season
Okay.
sometimes is earlier. I'm getting up at 3:45, 4 because I have to be in the office by 5, and then that hour-long workout or whatever has to be done by 6 a.m. So it usually depends. Most days, though, it's around that 4 to 5 a.m. time frame.
And your workouts are like, is it a variety of things? Is it cardio? Is it weights? Is it calisthenics? Is it yoga? Like when you say you're going to get your body moving, is that you just go to your home gym, you go somewhere, or what kind of workouts do you typically do?
I'll typically work out in the summer, like right now, because it's the middle of the July. I'm doing it at home. We have a workout room in our basement. And the fun thing for me, George, I get my kids down there. So sometimes I'll actually get up, I'll do my morning routine, but then I'll bring them back down. They're doing a workout and I'm putting up like a YouTube challenge workout. They're doing Mario Brothers, jumping over stuff, things like that. So I'll build that in because I want them to develop that habit. But for me, I do a combination of lifting and cardio. I'm a little bit messed up. I can actually read while I do cardio. So whether it's the elliptical, the Stairmaster, walking on an incline treadmill, I can read. And I love reading physical books. That's just me. I don't like reading on tablets or anything like that because I take notes
Yeah,
on my
right.
phone and then I'll keep those notes on my phone and I'll also save them on my computer. So if I have highlighted notes, I can be, oh, what did Atomic Habits say? What James Clear say about, all right, let me go back. I can pull it up pretty quickly. So I love
Mm.
doing that. But the weight workouts, I'll do about 3 full body routines where I'm strength training. And then every other day I'm doing some form and some version of cardio, whether it's like anaerobic intervals, things like that. But I'm doing something every day.
To kind of jump around a little bit, and I know we have maybe about 15 minutes left, and this is what this has already done for me, and I hope it has for other people as well. We're 46 minutes in, and this is something I read that it was either a podcast or something I read, and I do believe it's from Ed Milet. It's this idea of motivation and being motive and playing on your motives. Very, very, very impactful in some regards, very fleeting, very temporary, etc. There's inspiration, getting people to act, and then there's aspiration of wanting to be like someone. People like that are golfers that say, "Hey, I aspire to be like Tiger Woods," and you have those habits, routines, and rituals to try to aspire to be that, and it's just part of who you are. This has been very inspirational and aspirational for me. This is not a conversation for me that is 46 minutes and will be done by and dead in my mind and bones at 1 p.m. Just to let you know, coach. Like this is like that morning routine. Like I'll remember the 3 W's. I am capable of that. I am in the 80% of comfort. And I think there's 80%. So many of you listening to this, you're with me. And we're trying to get to that level of the 10%. And it's what we're willing to do. And you just heard his morning. And I think I get after it and I think I accomplish a lot. I think I get my 3 wins every day. I think I'm very grateful for all that. But I woke up and laid in bed for about 20 minutes. I got up and made coffee. I sat there and scrolled Instagram. I sat there. I did get my kid up. We got to the gym. He got his morning basketball workouts in, and I sat there and scrolled Twitter. Then I went to the coffee shop and got some reading. But it's like that's so comfortable for me. There was nothing impactful about my morning that positioned me towards greatness. Although I think I'm doing good things today. It's just an interesting mindset that I've got to. That's why it's inspirational and aspirational to me, right? I don't. It's kind of this mindset of aspiring, like to be like, not to be someone. I don't know if I am sitting around saying I need to be like Coach Rath. I need to be him. I need to create those habits to be like him, not be him, right? And I aspire to have that mindset and kind of those habits in me. And I just want to acknowledge you for that because this has really been great for me. I'm curious to jump around just a little bit with the last 15 minutes of the different people you've worked for. Who were you with the Rams? Were you with McVay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I came in with Sean.
So that difference between McVay and the name escapes me with the gentleman that runs the Philadelphia organization. But I hear these stories and I see these Instagram things about McVay and this, how he is and how he can remember plays from like the early 1900 or 1990s or whatever it is of different things that he has seen. Right. tell me leadership qualities of these elite coaches, these guys that win Super Bowls, and how they lead that organization. Like the gentleman that just got hired, I believe he just got hired. He may have been there for a while. And I saw some things about how the Atlanta Falcons were being run with this new coach that they might have. And I'm like, man, that's like powerful. Like this coach that's leading this and how he's speaking to these people and to get grown men to buy into this. But can you give me some like leadership and kind of team building mindset ideas that some of these coaches, like just start with McVay. How is he different? What does he do that might be different than the current coach you're working with?
Yeah, well, I love this because Sean McVay is still one of my best friends in the business, and I love the guy, and he's a guy. Every time I'm on the phone with him, it ends with that. It's, I love you, bro. Hey, say hi to the family. It's one of those to where he is a 10 times better leader than he is a football coach, George. And this guy is one of the best football coaches in the history of the game already. So for him, we came in together. He was 30 years old when he got hired as the head coach for an NFL organization. I was around the same age. So we're both in these leadership roles. It was my first big leadership role within the NFL. And we get hired into this organization at the same time. And they went 4-12 the year before. We didn't have high expectations. Everyone's like, all right, yeah, just go ahead. Let's see what they can do. And I walked in, and this guy, I could tell within, you talk about that first 5 minutes, I knew within that first 5 seconds that this was a legit person that was going to lead individuals to becoming better versions of themselves. So as I walked in, number one, we were both reading Extreme Ownership. I know ownership has come up a couple times, literally just off the whim. And we're like, oh, you're reading that book? Yeah, I love it. Jocko Willink, he's talking about this. We built a lot of our culture based on that. But as I went in, we became really close, really fast. We started working out together every morning, George. That was one of the times, like, we were getting there. We were probably getting at the facility at like 4:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning. And we would go through this quick 15 to 30-minute workout every single morning. But within that workout, George, we would talk about a couple things. Number one, hey, where's the team at? Anyone that we need to love up or anyone we need to be aware of? Cool. But then we would talk leadership. Hey, what'd you listen to? Oh, I heard this podcast. I read this book. You need to check this out. We started going through this process. It was like therapy for me and for him, George, because we went through this daily process. And once again, you talk about your morning structure. That was the first thing that we did every single morning. So we would get to the facility, and that was our first 15 to 30 minutes, getting us off on the right foot. As we built into that, I watched this guy from a 30-year-old transform in front of, we had Andrew Whitworth was like 37 years old. So we had players that were older than us in the building. And this guy gets up in front of the team. The first team meeting, that first offseason, George, was one of the best team meetings I've ever seen. He laid out the culture. He laid out what it was going to take to win. He laid out the long-term and the short-term vision. And then he murdered it. But then I asked him, I was like, how long did you prepare on that? He said, I've been preparing my whole life for that. And then realistically, like building this, he was like, I've been doing this for 2 months. So you look at what he put in so that he could have one 20-minute meeting go off without a hitch, without a flaw. And that guy put in the time and the effort and the commitment behind it that led it to becoming a really beneficial meeting. So for me, I've learned so many leadership lessons from guys like that. And the cool thing, his dad and his grandfather ran the San Francisco 49ers. His father wasn't in football. He played college football, but his dad ran TV affiliates around the country. So you look at, he learned leadership from an early lesson. And we go back to, what's your why? We always said, Ben Newman said, what's your burn? My burn is hopefully to leave a positive legacy for my kids. And I look at Sean to where his family has helped him be prepared for the role that he's in now as a head coach for an NFL organization. He's been working at that since he was literally 1 day old, because he's had a family that has put him in alignment with creating future success. So I was asking myself, what am I doing that my kids are going to be able to learn from? They're going to be able to pull from 30, 40, 50 years from now when they're in a leadership position and they're running a company. They need to be able to draw back on this experience. So that guy, he still teaches me. I love that guy, man. I can't say enough good things about Sean.
I'm curious about this, and this is I do love football. I've watched a lot of football. That means I'm a fan. That doesn't mean I know. I can't, I don't know what cover 2 is. I don't know any of the stuff, right? I'm very much a fan. I feel like that margin of error in that league of losing so many games, like you could say, you had me thinking about it because you mentioned that your team was 4-12, right? So you're 4-12. That margin of error, that margin of loss could have been 6 points, 1 touchdown, one field goal, like one play. just one thing, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe you're 7-7, you're 9-7, right? And it seems like that margin for error is so thin in that league to separate. If you're bad, you're bad. But that middle 80 that I keep bringing up, that middle 80 to get to that top 10% and to be 13-3, right? Seems to be the separator. Seem to be so. How do coaches manage that? Like, is it the details? Is it? It's probably all of it. It's the habits. It's the details. It's the buy-in. It's the conversation. It's being humble. It's being coachable. Like all that. But am I thinking about that right? There aren't that many blowouts in the NFL, right? It's so thin, right? Unless I'm reading it a little wrong. Am I thinking about that right?
No, you're 100% right. And I think the cool thing, you touched on it, George, it's if you're worried about all those things, because what you can't do is trip on anything that's behind you. So in a game, I always think football is one of the best microcosms of life. Within a game, there's 1,000 different situations where you're like, if that guy would have got that block, if that guy would have made that tackle, if that guy wouldn't have fumbled, if that guy would have made the field goal. There's so many different things that you can draw. Those are all outcomes. You can't control those. What you can control is the process. So once that's happened, how fast and how urgently can you move forward to correct the next one? Because if you're doing it correctly, you're bringing the players over on the sideline. Every coach is meeting with their position groups, and you're going over, hey, this went right, this went wrong. Let's learn from what we didn't do well, and let's build on what we did right. That's a process-oriented goal. Now we can control that. You can't control what just happened in the first quarter when it's the second quarter. So screw it. Get it out of your mind. Move on. Learn from it. Don't ignore it, but then draw from it what you need. So I think the margin of error is a great microcosm within a football game that matches to life. Because say you made a bad decision 5 years ago, move on. Give yourself some urgent grace to be able to forgive yourself. Now, urgent grace consistently through the same patterns, that's not good because that's repetitious. Now you're enabling yourself. But if you laid in bed for 20 minutes today, George, don't do it tomorrow. Don't let one bad start to a morning bleed into the next one. Make the urgent decision to move forward and say, all right, I'm going to learn from that. I'm not hitting snooze. I'm getting my feet on the ground. I'm going to take the toe test, and I'm going to get up and get moving with my day. Now you have allowed that mistake that could be seen as an obstacle to become an opportunity for improvement. So I think football, just like in life, there are so many different variations where we can pull from the bad, learn from it, build upon it, and then transform it into a good situation. But we have to make the choice to do it. It's not just looking back and continuing to enable ourselves. It's making that choice and defining that and then putting the action behind it.
Oh, man. So you have me thinking about Rich Diviney again, the Navy SEAL, and I do talk about his book a lot. It was impactful for me, the attributes, but the word resilience, and I think what he says about resilience is how long are you down for? How long does it take for you to get back to your baseline? So you made the comment of, hey, 5 years ago something bad happened to you, or you made a bad decision, and you're still carrying that backpack of bricks around. Like at some point you got to put the bag down. Right. And if you're still 5 years and you're not back to your baseline, in the NFL, like you got to be able to be resilient, get back to your baseline fast. Like if it's a 7-second play, like by the time that ball's hiked again, you better be back, because like we can't have a bad series or any of that. I probably only have like a few minutes left, but I have like 3 questions. What has happened to you over the past year or more when you look back, you've accomplished or you're doing, or a habit you've created where you're sitting back and you're really proud of yourself? Like I would say, for example, for me, like, and this is a 6-month thing, and I don't expect it to change the year. Like my 2024, I made a commitment to reading, like reading as much as possible. I've got books just in front of me. I got the Winning Book here in front of me of Tim Grover. I've got this Leaders Eat Last book by Simon Sinek, and I love it. And I've got a strategy around that, how I'm able to knock out all these books. And I'm really proud of myself for that, because I've never really tackled it like that. What have you done recently that you're really proud of? A year, last 5 years, that if you were to sit back 5 year, your 5-year self, your 1-year self, if they looked at you right now, they'd say, man, you're killing it in this.
Yeah, I love that. The first thing that comes to mind is writing, because I've been, like you are starting to get into, George, I've read for a long time, and it's something that I'm really proud of myself, but that's been years in the making. When I actually sat down number one, to write a book takes a lot of effort. It takes time, it takes a commitment, it takes a certain level of investment. So for me, when I got challenged with that, it was about a year ago. I was like, man, why haven't I done this? Because it's something I've toyed with the last several years. And then I finally said, you know what, stop it. Urgent. There's a default urgent mentality that has to go into whatever our actions are. And I just started writing. And a lot of it, I've actually contributed more on social media and some of these things. It's been uncomfortable because it's hard to do at first. And then it takes time. Once again, it takes an investment. So you're getting up early, you're posting certain things, you're typing on LinkedIn or on Instagram, whatever it is. But writing the book helped me formulate all those opinions, to find that clarity like I talked about. But that's something that hopefully I'm proud of for years and for decades, because that book's going to be there for my kids and hopefully for others to help them from a personal development and leadership perspective, because that's something that I've taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I've used all these lessons that I've learned and applied them into that. So that's something I would absolutely say I'm very proud of.
What are you hoping to do then in the next year to 5 years, that who you are now, 5 years from now, you're going to say, man, I'm really proud of myself for this. What's next? What's the big thing that you're going to tackle that will change your life and your family's life significantly?
Yeah, it goes into that burn or that why. Like, what's behind? What am I doing? I want to create a positive legacy, George. I want to create a positive legacy for not just my children, but for other people that I can hopefully inspire, and then others that want to aspire to achieve great things, just like you said. I love that. So for me, it's getting outside of my comfort zone. I didn't like posting on social media. If you would have like rewind 4 or 5 months ago, I didn't
Right.
post anything on social media. And now it's something that I've tried to embrace, because once again, living in the situations where you're uncomfortable, I think we have to dive into that. That develops grit, that develops perseverance. And I'm all for that. I want to live uncomfortable. So for me, it's doing that in 1 year, in 5 years. I want to look back and say, I've created a path to where others can be inspired and they're going to become better versions of themselves. If I can look back in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years and say this book has impacted these people. I just launched a YouTube channel. This YouTube channel has helped people become more active and healthy. I have helped people become better versions of themselves, and that helps them be better mothers, fathers, husbands, wives. I can look back with a positive legacy and I can say I've done good in this world. So right now, George, if I had to fast forward, that's what I'm hoping to achieve, and that's really what I will do.
Yeah, I love that. You have, man, this has really been good for me. And I know it's been good for everybody that will listen to this. The thing I really like that you just said, that I wish I was as comfortable saying as you just said. You said, I have had this impact. I have done this. I have done this. I'm having this legacy, etc. Right? I love that. I love that you own that. I love that you know you're providing that. I love that you are unashamed of saying, hey, I've done this and I'm going to continue to do it. And it's going to be more impactful and we're going to hit more people. And I'm going to, like, that's what I'm good at. Like, I love that. And I feel very, like, I feel I've done that. I feel I've done that. But sometimes I feel like I can't say that, right? I can't own that. Like, I feel like I'm not really doing that. As opposed to I'm like, I've got this impact. Like, these people that are out here, I'm making better fathers. I'm making better kids, and et cetera, executives and coach, like all that. Like, I'm doing that, and it's okay to say that, and being comfortable. Like, hey, I'm killing, and I'm crushing it. So like, I liked how you phrase that, because I struggle with that. And to your point about social media, I struggle with that. Like, I do struggle with that. Like, all right, like, this is what I want to be doing. This is what I hope to be doing. I think I'm good enough to be doing it. And the phone, the video, the Instagram, the LinkedIn, that's all part of it. It is all part of it. So you better be comfortable doing it. And I'm more reluctant to that. But I will say this on that point. Like, you don't know me, and every day you're impacting me. Like, and Ben doesn't know me. Ben would probably know my name now, but and when I run into him, I think he would say hi to me. Like, we know each other a little bit, but he doesn't know the level of impact every day he has on me. He doesn't, like, you don't know that, right? So I say that because of just to continue to encourage you that, like if you're impacting me, these other people that are listening to this podcast or following you on Instagram or other platforms you may be on, like, man, it matters, man. People need to hear to lean into their stress and, and grit and perseverance and being humble and being coachable. People need to hear that because a lot of us are in that 80%. Last question, and I'm curious, and I may be reading the room wrong, or I may be reading your Instagram wrong. So I apologize if I am. I'm in my basement bar. My wife and I, we're not fully done with this. We've done we're proud of what we've done down here. And I do like bourbon and having drinks and all that. I feel like your social media, in some respects, you are also a wine guy, right? Are you into wines and wineries and all of that? Like I'm curious on your interest in wine.
Yeah, big fan of wine. I do
Okay.
like bourbon too, George. So I love the background. For me, the wine obsession started, it was just before California. I started to enjoy wine. And then we moved just outside, not just outside, but we were by Napa. So my wife and I got spoiled, went to Napa, and we learned all these things. And what changed my perspective, George, the process. Once again, we talk about the process, and this might seem crazy to tie in wine to leadership and to personal development. The first time I went there and I started asking questions at some of these wineries, George, I started getting stories. They're like, oh yeah, when we get a frost advisory at 2:30 in the morning, we all have this alert that goes off. We take blow dryers, we hand blow dry the grapes so that they thaw. I'm like, wait, what? And I start hearing this. And I grew up in a small town in Michigan on a farm. So I start listening to all these things that come back, like my grandfather, who I'd see out working on the farm and things like this. And I start seeing the tie-in. I'm like, if you want to make a great glass of wine, a great bottle, you have to go through all the steps. And the crazy thing about this, George, it's like 10 years of a process before you even get that first bottle. You have to plant the grapes. You have to cultivate this soil. You have to do all these things. Then you have to choose if it's in the shade or if it's in a mountain, if it's a valley grape. All these things play into the complexity of the wine, but you're literally looking at like a 10-year process before you get your first bottle. So I started thinking about this from just personal development. Like, how patient do we have to be? If you told me in 10 years from now, you're going to reap the rewards of something you do today, every day from that 10-year period. Not many of us are that patient. So I started looking at this from that perspective. And George, I was like, man, this is incredible. So that's added into the passion. But I love the story behind wine. I love the years because you have a vintage. So every year our children were born, we can open up a different bottle and we can say, oh, remember, this is a 2017. This is for this year. This is for this anniversary. So I love the stories that come with wine. And I love the complexity and the process that it takes to build that great bottle of wine.
Well, I'm into that as well on the bourbon front. I live in St. Louis, and so if we just go south, and for some, my niece went to Kentucky, and I have family in the Louisville area. So when we go down there, we typically will hit, a distillery down there, and I am the same way. I've asked all these questions. I'm fascinated on that process. And you go into these warehouses with these where the bourbon is stored, and they have to have the windows open at certain times so the wind blows through there. They have to have them positioned a certain way. And I'm just like, man, they have got this down in order to be elite and be great at at making bourbon. So I am fascinated by that. Hey, Coach, I really can't thank you enough for this. I really can't. I know you're busy. Do you, my last question, I always have one last question. Do you carve your day up into wins? Like, are there things today that you have to get done that are your big wins? Like, do you write those down, as you say, as part of your 3 W's every day? When you write, do you reflect back on yesterday and say, okay, these were my 3 big wins. Here's things I'm grateful for, whatever it might be. But like, do you carve your day out into wins?
Oh, 100%. And those 3 W's, that's where it starts, George. So for me, I always love this. I write, I've gotten in the habit of writing, but I love the end of the day where you have to look at yourself in the mirror, in the bathroom mirror, or wherever you are. You have to critically examine yourself and say, did I get accomplished what I aimed out to today? And there's some days that are worse than others. There's some days that are phenomenal compared to others. But at the end of the day, I have to look at myself critically in the mirror and say, did I get the 3 W's? Okay, check. Now, did I create a positive difference for anyone else? Those are the questions that I was asked. And then going beyond that, what I like to do monthly, George, I would challenge you and everyone listening. I like to ask myself 2 specific questions at least once a month. What's one thing you've done in the last month that your younger self would just completely make fun of you for? It'd be like, you're an idiot. Why'd you do that? Number one, because that's going to bring humility back into the picture. That's going to help hopefully keep you a little bit less ego driven. You're going to be like, man, I'm an idiot in some ways. And then on the opposite end, this is something I've had to challenge myself with getting better. And it sounds like you've struggled with. What's one thing the younger version of me would pat myself on the back today and say, man, you've created a positive difference in the last month? Do you remember when you gave that huge tip to that waitress, or do you remember when you went out of your way, you didn't tell anybody about it, but you helped that person, or you went and spoke to the high school kids for free on your own time, whatever it is? And you can go back and say, man, I've created a positive difference for at least one person and hopefully more. Because hearing those stories, George, just like you've said, and I truly appreciate it, that's what drives you. I think everyone has that inherent nature within the humanity of us. We want to create a positive difference. And I think that's the beauty of this world as we continue on. We're all trying to create that legacy. We're trying to leave this place better than what we found it. And we got to continue to do that. So asking yourself those two questions, I think at least monthly, will help you get into that mentality of gratitude, but also humbly assessing yourself of what you need to do.
All right. One last question, and hold me to this time. When you are working with athletes, how do you determine your wins with what you're doing for them? Because I'm guessing your wins can't be, well, we converted on 3rd and 8 and so had a great block, right? I'm like, on the day-to-day basis, you working in a weight room or nutrition or sleep or conversation, how do you determine the wins and the progress that you're having with the athletes that you're working with on a day like today? If you were at the facility today and you walked out of there, how do you determine your wins for the day in the facility on July 9th?
Yeah, I love that question. So first, it's different for every player. I'll go through a couple different wins. Number one, the first win I always look at, because I have the number one job requirement that I have is orthopedically sound techniques. I look at our athletes not as the 20-year-olds or the 30-year-olds that they are right now, but if I'm coaching correctly from a physiological perspective, they're going to be able to play with their grandchildren when they're 60, 70, 80 years old. That's important to me, because if I'm sacrificing that for wins or for anything else in the short term right now, then I need to get out of what I'm doing, and I'm not doing a good job. So for me, it's that long-term investment in the athlete. The other wins that I've had, these micro wins, and some are major wins, is when an athlete will walk into my office, George, shut the door and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Yeah, what do you got? And it turns into a 2-hour conversation where that athlete's bawling, I'm probably crying too, and we're sharing life stories because they're going through something that they don't trust anyone else with that information. Could be something with their spouse, their family, whatever, but they just need someone to talk to. And we've developed that level of trust through vulnerability, through consistency, to where they trust me more than anyone else in the world. That's a win to me, George, because if I can sit there and I continue to build that trust, especially in a highly competitive world like professional sports, then I've done a good job. That's the greatest victory that I can earn, is earning the trust of an athlete, of a coach, of a coworker. That's the greatest trust, and that's the greatest win that I could ever have.
I love that. That's a great place to end it. I had a coach tell me this, a Hall of Fame basketball coach that I got to know really well, and this resonated with me in my coaching days where I was with athletes every day, but also professionally as I run professional teams now. He said, every day, think of every member on your team and ask yourself, what do they need and how can I help? Like, if you just kind of focus on that, what do they need? How can I help? What do they need? And that stuck with me. And he said, when you drive into the office, turn the radio off, think of all 12, 14 players on your team in the basketball world and ask yourself, what do they need? What do they need today? How can I help them with what they need? Not what they want, but what they need to hear. And you're living that because you're building that trust, right? This person cares about me. This person loves me. This person is invested in me. This is not a transaction of just, trying to perform on a Sunday, but to making sure you're healthy, that you're taken care of, and that you're valued, and to close doors and be vulnerable, right? In a very masculine world, I'm guessing, right? Where vulnerability, weakness is probably not how people want to lead, right? So I really appreciate that. But now, just to kind of close this up, one, I can't thank you. I cannot thank you enough for making the time for this today. I can't. I'm so appreciative of that opportunity with the Coach to Coaches program, not just with you, but with everybody else that is a part of that group to to be able to bounce ideas off and share wins and some losses, and to be supported and to lean into stress, as you say. Now, what's the best way for people to track you down? Is it your social media platforms, Instagram, and how else might people be able to get your message online?
Yeah, on all the platforms, the YouTube channel, like I mentioned, Ted Rath
Right.
Strength Coach, and then obviously Instagram, all the major platforms. And then we'll be launching a website here soon. The book will be coming out later this
Yes.
fall. So all those methods, anywhere, if you reach out to me, DM me, all that stuff.
Perfect. Is there a title to the book yet, or are you not to that point?
Not to that point yet. We're going through the final edits. We should have that in the next couple weeks.
Perfect. All right. All of Coach Rath's information will be in the show notes. And I can't thank you enough. There were some video problems here. If you've made it this far, this will be obviously up on our YouTube channel and our podcast channels. There was some video issues a little bit earlier, but I know this will be this is going to be. I do show notes on a number of on all the books I read, all the podcasts I listen to, and sometimes the podcasts that I create. This is definitely one that I'm going to take a lot of notes on, and then just be able to recall, because this has been very, very inspirational for me, and hopefully for everybody else as a listen. Coach Rath, thank you so much again for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it.